Hey guys, welcome to my channel and thank you so much for choosing me today. So for today's case, we are going to be doing another serial killer video. As mentioned in my last case that I covered last week, we are going to be doing a serial killer marathon. So for today's case, we are still in KZN and this time it is taking us along the south coast. So let's get into this video. On the 9th of September 2007, started as a nice and normal day as Sundays usually are, quite peaceful and very calm, until a dog was seen carrying a decomposed head of a woman in the community of Shayamoya in Umzinto. The community of Shayamoya is quite small and close-knit. So when residents saw a random dog carrying a random head that is decomposing, that seemed to belong to a woman, this, quite rightfully so, shook up the neighborhood. Now, the scary find led residents to the nearby sugarcane fields where they found the headless body. The nightmare continued when a second body was found in the same sugarcane field. Now, this sugarcane field was familiar to everyone. Kids played in the sugarcane field. Residents were employed to work in the sugarcane field. So can you imagine living in a community whereby the familiar, fun sugarcane field where your kids probably played around is now tainted with this dark cloud whereby bodies are being found? Now, just like in any neighborhood, news spread pretty quickly about the dead bodies that were found in the field. And not long after, residents would notify authorities so that the police can come over and take over and investigate what in the world is going on. And this resulted in the Port Shepstone Crime Unit and the KZN Provincial Crime Unit forming a task team. 30 police officers, along with sniffer dogs, were tasked to go and search the cane field. And in the meantime, a forensics team from Pretoria flew down to lend their hand in investigating these corpses. Now, on that field, we would find that 11 bodies would be found after the initial 2 bodies that were discovered by cane workers. Now, at first, the police were a bit in denial, but with the similar deaths and the obvious amount of bodies that were now being dug up in the field, you could not reach that conclusion because it's 2 bodies. But now that 11 more bodies were found, it's kind of looking like a serial killer is on the loose. All the bodies that were found in the field belong to women between the ages of 18 and 25 as per the forensic specialists. It was also determined that these victims had been strangled to death. Many of the bodies were badly burnt and had various degrees of decomposition, but still badly decomposed as well. These bodies were found approximately 15 meters apart from each other. And not only that, but IDs were found close to the bodies, welfare cards were found close to the bodies, along with CVs. And the police kind of figured that the serial killer lured all these women, promising them jobs. The job recruiter bait, for lack of a better term, is an old trick in the book. Now, serial killers always take advantage, or just criminals in general, whether it be serial killers, human trafficking, just plain old thieves. They always use the jobs as the bait. They promise you a job, they promise you a position, they ensure that they will get you a job, and they take advantage of the fact that South Africa has such a high unemployment rate, which is very unfortunate, and people are desperate. So even if someone random approaches a woman, especially promising them something like a job, where jobs are very scarce and are in high demand at the same time, chances are that the woman will go with this random man. And unfortunately, by the time they are led to a secluded place like a cane field where nobody can see, by then it's too late and the serial killer attacks and kills. Now, because these bodies were so badly decomposed or badly burnt, it was very hard for the forensics team to identify them. And it was of the utmost importance to find a clue that would lead to a serial killer. And this is what I find so fascinating about murder cases in general, that all it takes is one little mistake that a killer will always leave, whether it be DNA, whether it be an item that links to the serial killer or to the murderer in general. There's always that one thing, that one connection that will always lead police to the killer. And this is what the forensics team, the police force in general, needed from this case, because as it is, it's already so hard to identify these victims. So we will now need a clue from the killer himself. Now remember, some of the things that were found amongst the bodies were ID cards, CVs, and the police later learned that all of these people were actually missing persons. The families had opened up missing case files for them because they had gone somewhere and never returned. When authorities spoke to the families, a lot of them said that their loved ones was last seen going to a meeting with this random man who had promised them a job. But even with that information, police still needed that one clue that could lead to the killer himself. Finally, a woman came forward who provided an identikit of the man who she encountered in a taxi ride. So what happened is she shared a taxi with this man. I'm assuming at that point she did not know his name. Obviously, they were strangers. So he had told her about a job and was kind of recruiting her. She had decided that, you know what, it's a job. Everyone needs a job. And the idea seemed legit to her. However, at the last minute, she decided not to jump off the taxi with this man. She changed her mind, thankfully. Whether a killer or not, I just think it's a better idea to not go with somebody who you do not know. Victims were stripped of their clothing. Investigators were there and they found that the bodies were stripped of their clothing and all their items had been stolen. Now, whoever this killer was stole cell phones of the victims. So he'd steal their money, he stripped them of their clothing, and he also stole cell phones, which was a very good thing for the police, because police brought in cell phone experts who were able to trace those cell phones. And just what the police needed, the tracing worked, and it led them to a lady in Stanger. This lady was sister-in-law to Thozamile Taki. So I'm assuming Thozamile stole these cell phones and probably left one at his sister-in-law's house. But anyway, the sister-in-law was cooperative and led them to where Thozamile lives. On the 24th of September 2007, so by the end of that month in 2007, police barged into Thozamile's place in Chatsworth. It was 2 a.m. and Thozamile was home with his girlfriend. So police barged in, seizing the opportunity to catch this man along with his girlfriend. So they were both arrested. Upon entering the home, police found that he had more cell phones belonging to the victim along with their personal items. You may be wondering why they arrested Thozamile's girlfriend, who goes by the name of Hlengiwe Nene. She was arrested and charged for being an accessory after the fact. Now, I don't know about you, but if I have a boyfriend and he's coming home with the random items of clothing and all these cell phones all at once, I would probably question it. Now, I'm not saying that Hlengiwe didn't question it, but who knows, right? So the police arrested her as well, and they were both taken into police custody. And even though Thozamile was arrested, bodies still kept coming up, okay? Bodies were still being found. It was later concluded that a total of 13 murders were linked to Thozamile Taki. In 2008, Thozamile's trial began. There were a total of 103 witnesses. Thozamile would lure them, promising them jobs. These are the women that we are talking about. And he would ask them to bring money along with them, between 300 Rand to 3,000 Rand. He would tell them that this money is to secure the job position that he promised them. And people are so desperate that these women would borrow money from their loved ones, okay, because they had high hopes. He was so convincing. He was charming. He promised them that, he told them, listen, you got the job if you bring this money to secure this position. So to the woman, they had the job in the bag. It wasn't a maybe. It wasn't a possibly. With that bribe money, they knew that that job position would be secured. Police suspected that Thozamile raped the woman, but this could not be confirmed because the bodies were so badly decomposed or burnt. He was charged with 13 counts of murder, 13 counts of robbery with aggravating circumstances. And the judge was not lenient with Thozamile because it was obvious that he took advantage of the high unemployment rate, so they were definitely not going to be easy on him. Thozamile Taki showed no remorse and would even laugh at the witnesses whilst they were testifying. Now, let's talk about this no remorse. So recently, I had listened to a podcast from True Crime South Africa. The interviewer had Gerard Labuschagne. He is a serial killer expert, a qualified psychologist. I had mentioned Gerard, which is how you pronounce it, not Gerard, like how I said it in my last video. But anyway, Gerard was being interviewed on his experience. As I said, he is a serial killer expert. He had worked on over 100 cases, which is an alarming amount, an alarming number for serial killers. He touched on the no remorse aspect when murderers or criminals are being convicted or are in trial, etc., whatever the case is. And he said that that is such a bad indicator of whether a person will be a possible repeat offender, because a lot of the times, as he explained, the state or the judge will analyze how he is dealing with the trial whilst he's sitting there on the bench. But by saying somebody has remorse or showed less remorse or showed so much remorse because they were crying, it's still a bad indicator, because somebody can show remorse for something, but it doesn't particularly mean that they will stop doing the thing that they are showing remorse for. So he used the cheating example, like when lovers cheat on each other. He says that your lover can cheat on you and be found out and cry and show remorse, etc., and feel guilt, genuinely feel guilt for cheating on you, but it does not mean that they will stop cheating, because a lot of the times, you know, people will cheat on their loved ones, cry about it, be sorry about it, and then a month or two later, or even the very next day, will go out and do that very same thing, which I found so interesting, because I had never thought about it like that. Because with every documentary that I watch, I always like to see if the offender will shed a tear, if they will just be deadpan, if they will show some sort of emotion in hopes that they regret what they're doing. But that does not mean just because an offender is crying that they should be released early or they should be given a lighter sentence, because chances are it's a manipulation. And if they ever had to get out, if a serial killer ever had to get out of jail, they will probably offend again. So the idea of, you know, using the no remorse or lack of remorse as an indicator of whether he should stay longer in jail or not is a bad indicator, because somebody can literally be sobbing at the judge's feet and still go out and kill again. Back to Thozamile, he was not a first-time offender either. He was convicted of housebreaking in 1997 and robbery in 1999. By the 19th of January 2011, Thozamile was sentenced to 13 life sentences and 208 years on top of the 13 life sentences to run concurrently. Thozamile was found guilty on all charges, and his girlfriend Hlengiwe Nene was later released because they found that she actually had nothing to do with any of his serial killings. And by January 2011 only did his trial end. Hlengiwe and Thozamile had only been together for 6 months, and she was so taken off guard. She was so distraught. She was so traumatized by the fact that this man that she was sharing a home with. Okay, Hlengiwe, why are you moving in with someone only after 6 months though? But each to their own. Don't come for me. Whatever. Anyway, when she found out about his shenanigans, she called it off. That was the end of the relationship, and she basically wants nothing to do with him and is thankful that she'll actually never see him again, since he'll be in jail forever anyway. It was determined that Thozamile could not be rehabilitated. It was just like beating on a dead horse. The judge also took note when sentencing on Thozamile's character. He said he had a way with words. He was very charming to women when he needed them, where he wanted them. But his true character came out in court while the witnesses were testifying. He would laugh, and he even went off at a photographer. He did not want a photographer taking pictures of him. And the judge simply told him, well, then don't look at the photographer. The judge described him to be a true jackal in sheep's clothing. A memorial plaque was erected for the victims of the Shiamoya sugarcane field to keep their memory alive, all those women who unfortunately were killed at the hands of a monster. And Thozamile was considered one of the worst serial killers in KZN. I feel like they say that for everyone because each serial killer is crazy in their own way. And one thing's for sure, serial killers will always be deadly. So to me, they are all the worst. You know what I mean? But anyway, that is the sugarcane serial killer case. All done, all wrapped. Let me know what you think about this case. Did you know about Thozamile Taki killing women, luring them into sugarcane fields out there in the South Coast? Let me know your thoughts on this video. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed. Let me know what you think about, you know, the state looking at convicted murderers and, you know, judging by their lack of remorse or not. Let me know what you feel about that topic. I found that very, very interesting. If you want to listen to that podcast, to that interview, I will link it in the description below. It's so interesting to you know, hear these stories from the horse's mouth, from a profiler, from a psychologist who dealt with these serial killers. You know what I mean? So I will link it in the description below. It's a very interesting listen. And with that being said, I will see you in my next video. Bye.